Hello, and welcome to the Talking Michigan Transportation Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Cranston. Since the pandemic began nearly 2.5 years ago, we've spoken frequently on the podcast about a surge in speeding on Michigan roads and those across the country. That surge seemed to be sparked by fewer vehicles being on the roads and reduced congestion with that. One area of special concern is speeding in work zones where men and women toil every day to build and repair those roads to ultimately make our travel smoother and more efficient. According to the World Health Organization, speed is at the core of a global road injury epidemic. Studies estimate that over 1.2 million people die each year on the roads worldwide, and 20 to 15 million suffer non-fatal injuries. Specific to the issue of speeding in work zones, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says speeding contributed to 37% of the fatal crashes in work zones. So that brings us to the issue of automated traffic enforcement and a bill in the Michigan legislature which would enable that kind of enforcement in work zones here. In 2006, the state of Illinois became the first to authorize the use of automated traffic enforcement programs to enforce speed limits in highway work zones. So first today, I'll speak with Juan Pava, who's the Safety Programs Unit Chief in the Bureau of Safety Programs and Engineering at the Illinois Department of Transportation, and he'll talk about how things have worked and what they've learned along the way since they implemented that 16 years ago. Then later, I'll speak with Lance Binonimi, Vice President of Government Affairs at the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association, about the proposed legislation and some demonstrations of the technology on Michigan roads just last week. First, I'm with Juan Pava, who is the Safety Programs Unit Chief in the Bureau of Safety Programs and Engineering at the Illinois Department of Transportation. Juan, thank you for taking time to do this. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me, Jeff. I'm really happy to be able to provide any additional insight from our Illinois experience.
When it comes to experience, compared to most of the states who have implemented this, Illinois has a lot. So could you just talk, I guess, at the highest level first as an overview of what it means to have automated enforcement for speeding in work zones and whether you think it's overall been a success?
Yes, definitely. So our program dates back to late 2010 to early 2012. So, in 2010, Illinois DOT, in coordination with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, we put together a research study to evaluate the effects of speed photo enforcement on operating speeds. The results of that program showed that there are benefits to be had from having this type of system. So in 2012, Illinois started what we have today as the photo speed enforcement in work zones in Illinois. And we believe that we continue to see the benefits from an operational standpoint. We believe that the presence of these vans throughout the state do have an effect in behavior of drivers, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to mitigate the potential of speeding through work zones that have shown to be deadly, not only in Illinois, but nationwide. So we believe it is very beneficial.
So there's no control experiment, obviously, to compare what it would be like these past couple of years without it. But have you seen in Illinois what we saw in Michigan with speeds just shooting up astronomically with the beginning of the pandemic and fewer cars on the road? And then, not necessarily coming back, although we're doing a little better in 2022, but our crashes and deaths are still up from pre-pandemic periods. Is it the same there?
It was pretty similar. So we did see an uptick in the number of fatal crashes that had speeding associated with it in the beginning of the pandemic. Now, at the same time, we also kind of pulled back on the deployment of the speed photo enforcement and all other enforcement throughout the state because there were many things happening in early 2020, across the nation. So it's hard for us to make that correlation. That being said, in previous year, prior to the pandemic, the primary cause for crashes in work zones wasn't necessarily speeding. So I don't want to. I don't think that correlation, causation means correlation or whatnot. So I don't want to give all of the full credit to the speed photo enforcement, because we have other very valuable programs in Illinois that target risky behaviors. But we believe that there is a benefit to having this program. In Illinois, our fatalities have in work zones have stayed pretty flat throughout. In fact, is one of the few programs in Illinois that we have a slight decrease. We see the speed photo enforcement as one tool in the tool bag to allow us to have a much wider reach of enforcement, because resources in enforcement are quite limited.
Does your research indicate whether it's word of mouth and people finding out that this is going on in work zones, or is it just the presence and people just like seeing a police cruiser, recognizing that a vehicle is set up that does this kind of enforcement, and that alone has a deterrent effect?
So it's both. So it's both people driving through the work zone and seeing an additional piece of equipment out there that is clearly marked as speed photo enforcement. Now let me tell you that we are very open with the public about where the speed photo enforcement is and when it is out there. The van is supposed to be easily to be seen by a vehicle driving through, because we want to give people the opportunity to slow down through the work zone before they get cited. It's only if they refuse to lower their speed that they will actually get a citation or get a hit on that vehicle. Now, in the research study, it looked not only at the change in operating speeds due to the presence of the van, but it also looked at something that they call the halo effect, which was how far would that the effect of a speed photo enforcement van being in a location expand in the near regions and near work zones, and they found that they were seeing a significant or noticeable speed decrease in adjacent work zones, even when the speed van was not deployed. So people don't like to get citations. And so I believe that this has the opportunity to help change behaviors.
Yeah, I've read about the halo effect a little bit. Could you talk a little bit more about that concept and how it's come to inform you and people that do what you do in your work?
Definitely. So in Illinois, we typically have 5 speed photo enforcement vans that we rotate throughout the state. And so that helps us do 2 things. One, we only target work zones that we truly believe there's a benefit to deploying the speed photo enforcement van. So, for instance, if there's a work zone where there's recurring congestion, we're not going to deploy a speed photo enforcement van out there because it would be futile. But also it allows us to take advantage of this halo effect while minimizing our cost on the program. So this was something that was taken into consideration when determining, how many vans to have and where we deploy them. So at the beginning of the year, we identified work zones that where we expect there's going to be issues with speeding, and then we coordinate so we have as much exposure of those minivans to travel in public as possible, to try to get as much benefit from for our investment. Now, speaking of investment and cost, and one thing that we made sure that was part of our program is that all of the revenue from these speed citations will go back into the Hireback Fund for enforcement in work zones, and that is a way to show that this is truly a program that is designated and designed for the safety of work zones in Illinois.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think some of the critics of this, obviously, one of the things you hear a lot is the big brother, privacy argument, but the other one is that this whole thing is just a money grab by various government agencies, and it's not. And what you do with the money, demonstrates that it's not, and it also doesn't account for the cost to taxpayers of work zone crashes, and what that does to the cost of projects, not to mention deaths and hospitalizations and the real cost of those things.
And I did want to mention, Jeff, that for the Big Brother aspect, and privacy, that is something that is very, very important. It's very important for the Department of Transportation to take that seriously. And there are clauses that you can put into a contract to ensure that whoever the vendor is providing the services for the speed photo enforcement is a responsible entity, that it is treating that data responsibly. So that is very important to take into consideration and to take it seriously.
Do you still hear that? Or, what kinds of things still come up, 10, 12 years into doing this in Illinois? Are those the kinds of things that you still hear in terms of pushback?
We had when legislation was being passed, of course, and it continues to be a concern of people. However, in the 10 years of service that we've had with our current vendor, we haven't had any issues of data breaches or data missing. Also, we haven't had many issues of citations being contested. Granted, many citations going through the process get either withdrawn or changed, because we make sure that all the supporting data is there with the citations, so they're actually valid. So this is going to be a point of contention for any type of automated enforcement there is, but you just have to make sure that both the Department of Transportation or whoever the operating office is of this program is keeping, making sure that they're paying attention to the details of the contract to make sure that any issues that may come up are addressed.
Well, and I think that ultimately you just keep reminding people that this is not about issuing citations; it's about getting people to slow down. That's
exactly.
what the win is.
So. Yeah, no, definitely. And we have made sure that we're very clear that we would be totally and completely happy if there are 0 citations coming every month, because that means that people are obeying the speed limit, which is the goal of the program. Our goal is not revenue. In fact, we are not using any of the revenue or any of the expected revenue of the program to pay for the program itself. We are paying for the cost to run the program upfront from road fund, and any reimbursement that would come from the citations is not going to go to pay for the speed photo enforcement program. Is going to go to pay for officers doing other type of enforcement as well. So within work zones, that's very important.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Talk about the fine structure and what it costs and how it's probably stair-stepped for repeat offenders.
Well, it's not actually. Like we try to change legislation to make a step increase in fines. But currently, the way it is in Illinois is that there is an increased fine for speeding in work zone. So if you get a fine through the speed photo enforcement, it's just as if a trooper or an officer on the side of the road would pull you over for speeding in a work zone. You get cited for that same same clause in the law. So it is a $250 minimum fine for the first offense. Second offense, I believe, is $750 for speeding in work zone. Illinois Supreme Court rules that for any citation over $225, I believe, or over $95 actually, you appearance in court is mandatory. So if you get a citation through the speed photo enforcement, it is at least a $250 fine with mandatory court appearance.
Well, as you know, whether it's drunk driving or speeding or anything, what seems to get a certain demographic's attention, meaning young drivers, it's cost. It's the fear of paying that big fine. So if that's what it takes, then then so be it, I guess. Thank you, Juan. Is there anything else you want to say about Illinois and what you guys have learned along the way?
Um, well, it is a program that requires a lot of attention in the front end. Making sure that you have a contract that makes sense for everyone, not only for the operators at the state police and for the Department of Transportation, whoever's administering it. But once you have a program in place, I believe that there is a very good tool to have in your toolbox to allow to help us change that behavior, which has proven to be very difficult. So I'm really happy to see that neighboring states are jumping on the bandwagon, and I'm looking forward to increasing the pool of vendors that we have in the Midwest to provide this service, because I believe it's a really good one.
Yeah, and the technology is evolving and getting better all the time, and that's a good thing too. Yeah, so thank you again, Juan. I appreciate you taking time to talk with us about this, and we'll probably be back in touch. Or I know you'll be following closely to see when the Michigan legislation finally gets passed and signed by the governor.
Definitely, and I'll reach out to my counterparts in Michigan and celebrate with them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
And again, I'll be back for our second segment with Lance Binonimi of the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association right after this short message.
Avoid the wait and remember the Mackinac Bridge is closed to traffic Labor Day for the annual Bridge Walk starting at 6:30 a.m. Spend some extra time in the UP or take your time heading north, since the bridge won't reopen to traffic until noon to allow walkers to clear the bridge. For more information, head to mackinacbridge.org/walk.
Okay, we're back, and as promised for the second segment, I am with Lance Binonimi, who is the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association, and the hardest working man in legislative affairs in Michigan because he has to spend so much time telling people how to spell his name. So
either that or the title.
Yeah, that too.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
Sure. So talk a little bit about, I've given kind of an overview of what automated speed enforcement in work zones is and what other states have been doing and how it's been successful there. It's kind of been a bit of a slog here in Michigan to get there, but it sounds like we're making progress. Is that your assessment?
Yeah, I think so. And Michigan just started looking at this probably about 18 months ago. And we, through MDOT and the industry and the Work Zone Safety Task Force, we came up with some goals and some ideas and policies that could help reduce speeds and improve safety within our work zones. And we found that many other states, up to 15, I believe, have some sort of automated camera speed enforcement within work zones and have shown significant success. In Maryland, they've shown up to 90% reduction in speeds. They have virtually zero repeat offenders. And so we've been working with the legislature and interested parties like state police, MDOT, and the unions to draft legislation that we hopefully can get across the finish line and on the governor's desk. We were able to get it out of Judiciary Committee, which was a difficult committee, and had some of the more conservative members of the Republican caucus on it, and we were able to convince them that this is a smart thing to do and will protect lives. And so we're hopeful that the full House can take it up sometime in the near future and convince the Senate to do so as well before we get done with the end of the year.
So we had a couple of demonstrations on ongoing road projects, one east of Grand Rapids near I-96 and M6 last week, and then another one near Flint. And you had lawmakers at both of those. Would you say that the questions in the comments that you heard kind of tracked with what you said in getting it out of committee, that it's opened some people's minds?
Yeah, those presentations were incredible. And I think standing alongside semi-trailers going, 60, 70 miles an hour, and seeing some of the people who are speeding right past a group of 30 or 40 individuals in fluorescent and reflective safety vests really opened their eyes. But then seeing the technology and how it worked really helped them get an idea of what this is and what it entails. And we're hopeful that the dozen or so lawmakers that attended the first 2 days are able to go back and tell their colleagues exactly what they saw and how they felt and what they think they can do. We hope that that's going to be a very positive influence on getting it done.
Just seeing these out there as people, I think what the other states have learned is that as people come to find out what this is and they start to identify the technology, that's set up, it has that effect of the halo effect, I guess, of making people slow down, just like when they see a police cruiser. But one question that comes up is, why can't we just have Michigan State Police trooper posted at every work zone? And talk about why that's difficult.
Yeah, and we have at the association advocated for a police presence on every job site. And if you ask any of the MITA membership, they will all say that having a police presence on a work site will slow traffic down significantly. But unfortunately, we are short of law enforcement agents in the state, and resources are not readily available to have people and a presence out there. In addition, we're investing a lot of money into these individuals to train them properly and to go out and protect the citizens of the state. And while this is a type of protection, certainly an automatic speed and camera enforcement would be a lot less resources on the state than it would be having a trained trooper out there. Again, we promote both, and we just feel that this is a good way to supplement that traditional law enforcement.
So when you talk about having to win hearts and minds and people, coming around and being willing to take a second look at this, what were the roadblocks, I guess, and what were the perceptions that you had to overcome? Was it mostly about the Big Brother concept and privacy?
Yeah, the privacy argument comes up often. And I think that there's also a misconception that this is a big money grab, and that all we're trying to do is just trying to take money away from the citizens of Michigan. And, in all of our studies that we've seen across the different various states, and I'm sure you've heard from the other states that you've asked, these are declining revenues, which is the whole intent. We want less people speeding and less people getting tickets because we want to change driver behavior. And so, that's the other argument that we hear is, the state's just trying to get money out of the citizens. And that's just not quite true. We're just trying to save some lives and really change driver behavior.
Well, that argument doesn't begin to account for the cost to all of us for crashes and what it does to construction projects, not to mention injuries and loss of life. And I mean, those costs are astronomical compared to what people might pay out in fines because of this.
Absolutely. No question.
So going forward, what do you think, needs to happen next? If you look at your crystal ball, how would you handicap this?
Well, the House returns, I think the Senate as well, returns back to session for 2 days in September. And we're really hopeful that in one of those 2 days we can get this on the agenda and get it passed through the House. And we had some very fruitful conversations with Chairman Barrett in the Senate at one of the demonstrations, and we're hopeful that he will give us a chance over in the Senate if, in fact, the bill gets over to transportation.
Well, I think you touched on something earlier that's really speaks to the importance of this and the momentum that's building, and that's that you've got labor leaders and industry leaders and DOTs and the other road associations, all on board, and you don't get that for everything. So, I mean, that has to spell some chance of success, right?
You would hope so, and it really is because the data is just the proof is in the pudding. This is a success story across the nation, and we're just looking for some help. We keep hearing all these anecdotal evidence of people going 110 miles an hour through a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit zone, 80 and 90 miles an hour. I think we saw a couple 80 miles an hour on the M6 project, and it's quite frankly scary. And we need to protect these individuals who are improving our infrastructure across the state, and this is one way to do it.
Yeah, we talk a lot about what it would be like to have cars speeding through our workplaces, which, for you and me means an office. And it's just really hard to put yourself in the shoes of those workers. But when we stood out there, like you said, on M6 and you heard those trucks rumbling, it gave you a feel for what that must be like.
Absolutely. And what the interesting part about that is when the semis would go past, you could tell those who travel interstate, because you heard them a couple hundred yards down after they saw the camera hitting their air brakes, because they know that they don't have it in Michigan, but they recognize the system. And so I think it's just obvious. It's going to slow people down, and hopefully it'll improve the safety of our workers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you're a long haul trucker, you've seen this in other states, so that probably did trigger something in their minds. I hadn't thought about that. Thanks, Lance, for taking time to talk about this and for all you're doing to advocate for the safety of the workers.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you again for listening to this week's edition of the Talking Michigan Transportation Podcast. I would like to thank Randy Dubler and Corey Peaty for engineering this week's podcast. To subscribe to show notes and more, go to Apple Podcasts and search for Talking Michigan Transportation.